We might have killed Osama Bin Laden, but Al-Qaeda lives on. Its young prince, Omar Khadr, is coming back to Canada as soon as he can. Joining me now, live from our Washington, D.C. studio, is David Gartenstein-Ross, an analyst in security matters with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and the author of a book called Bin Laden's Legacy. Hey, welcome to the show.
It's good to join you.
Now, the subtitle is Why We're Still Losing the War on Terror. I think we're winning in some ways. I mean, I think Iraq, on the whole, is a success, even though it's still unstable and a violent place. I think we've deposed one dictator. I think there are some successes. Why do you argue that Al-Qaeda is far from finished?
I think, first of all, I agree that there are some successes. There's no doubt about that. And the fact that there hasn't been another mass casualty attack like 9/11 in the West over the course of the past decade is also quite a success. I mean, there have been two significant attacks, but nothing on the scale of 9/11. However, I think that there's two reasons why I would describe us as being behind right now. The first one comes down to a question of network dynamics. That is, do we actually understand how resilient a network like Al-Qaeda is? In the past, back in 2001 through 2003 to 2004, we made a lot of mistakes in underestimating the resiliency. And especially with the talk of Al-Qaeda being on the verge of strategic defeat, I have concerns that we're again underestimating this organization. The second reason it comes down to a question of strategy. Al-Qaeda's overarching strategy was economic in nature. They really wanted to bankrupt the U.S. and other countries. That's one reason why I would depart with you on the Iraq War. Saddam Hussein didn't have a significant relationship to Al-Qaeda, and overall it was an incredibly expensive conflict. In fighting against a small enemy, relatively small enemy like Al-Qaeda, you need to keep the battle as small as possible. And over the past decade, we've done a good job of broadening it, which works to their advantage and not to ours.
Well, now, how do you fight them if you're keeping small and nimble? I get it. Less layers between the people doing things and the final decision makers. Right. Quick turnaround time. We all have our Hollywood images in our mind of the little battalion of the A team going out there and doing it. But how do you? What would a counterstrike to Al-Qaeda look like in your mind, if not this larger security apparatus? Like, what would you do differently?
Well, there's two different things that we're talking about when we say keeping it small tends to play to our advantage. One of these is keeping our resources after 9/11 concentrated in the Afghanistan-Pakistan theater in order to try to prevent the organization from regrowing there rather than marching on to Iraq and drawing resources away from that theater. That, to me, represents a much more calculated use of our resources. A second thing comes down to the security apparatus that we use, which is not a very nimble apparatus. Things, for example, like using profiling as a means of risk assessment in airports, looking for people whose behavior suggests deception, nervousness, and the like, rather than having a massive security apparatus that maximally searches passengers either at random or else every passenger coming through. Something like that could help to chip away the large expense of our current security apparatus.
Oh, I agree with you on the TSA. Up here in Canada, we call it CATSA. It's just as bad, just as stupid, and in 10 years they've found just as many terrorists. That is none. But if you don't agree with taking the war to Iraq, if you thought that was a diversion, do you think that we're doing the right thing in Afghanistan now? Both Canada and the United States are still there.
Well, it's difficult to say in Afghanistan right now. I mean, it's been quite some time, and the problems there are there's a multitude of problems. Not just Al-Qaeda is a problem. You also have not only a Taliban insurgency, but people who've thrown in their lot with insurgents for a variety of reasons, including the ineffectiveness of the Karzai government. I have not gotten over to Afghanistan since the U.S. implemented its surge strategy there. I found that being in Iraq post-surge was very helpful in clarifying what's going on. But certainly, the majority of people looking at Afghanistan don't think things are going well right now, and there's a sort of consensus converging around the idea of trying to stand up the Afghan forces as quickly as possible in order to withdraw from that theater.
We only have a few moments left. Tell me your thoughts on Pakistan. Earlier you said that was part of the nexus or the rat hole here. I agree with you. What are you going to do? It's an independent country. It's got a nuclear bomb. How would either a big or a small and nimble response to Al-Qaeda work in that country?
Well, big and small doesn't always dictate that you have a response to every question. In the case of Pakistan, one of the key mistakes made over the past decade was thinking that when Musharraf did his about face and threw in his lot with the United States, that was really going to stick. It hasn't, and the fact that the U.S. is in Afghanistan has been something that's really tied its hands with respect to formulating a cohesive Pakistan policy.
Last question for you. Omar Khadr, I call him the Prince of al-Qaeda. His family was an al-Qaeda family. He set IEDs with al-Qaeda. What do you think about the fact that he may be coming back to Canada and back on the streets within a year?
Well, look, that's a case which, as you know, often is a very misunderstood case. There's a lot more evidence there than a lot of the public perception indicates, and it is indeed, in my view, a very problematic story.
All right, David Gartenstein, Ross, thank you very much for joining us live